have a look at the digital behemoths now, and big news out of the United States that the antitrust provisions are going to be exercised against Facebook. Let's catch up with Kosha Gada again, who's the Managing Director of Recastled. Thanks for joining us again, Kosha. This is a big story because Facebook is such a massive company. It relates to, of course, the fact that they own Instagram and WhatsApp as well, something I suppose a lot of users might not be aware of, but it gives the company such incredible market power. What are we going to see unfold?
Good to be with you again, Chris. So this news today is the culmination of a year-long investigation that was being undertaken by various government bodies and the United States FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and 48 states and territories. So virtually almost all the attorneys general of those states have filed separate lawsuits, but very complementary ones. And what they're alleging is that Facebook's anti-competitive behavior, the way they're charging it, sort of is on two grounds. One is exactly what you alluded to, which is that they've kind of taken this whack-a-mole acquisition strategy. Whenever there was a competitor rising up that could have mounted a reasonable challenge to them in the competitive markets, their strategy was to acquire them. And so they acquired Instagram for $1 billion in 2012, and then later on WhatsApp in 2014 for $19 billion, which was a staggering sum. And the reason for that was basically to sort of acquire their competition. And then the other thing that they're charging, the other angle, is that they engage in sort of exclusionary anti-competitive behaviors for third-party developers. And this is something that plagues all the big tech companies that are under increasing scrutiny, where their strategy is to get scale of enormous levels, and then they become the portal to other companies who want to access consumers, and everybody basically has to abide by their terms, pay a toll, essentially, on the Facebook highway or the Google highway. So that's sort of what this charge is. They have been anticipating this and been preparing their defense for this, and I think it's going to sort of hash out in the courts.
Is there a realistic chance that the US authorities will force them to break up these companies? Because that would seem to make a lot of sense. We know how big and powerful they are anyway, but if you had Instagram, for instance, and WhatsApp, they're all separately owned, competing against each other. Surely that's going to be better for everybody, especially consumers.
Yep, so there's two lenses in which to look at this. One is a legal lens, and the issue really with antitrust law, the way it sits in the books in the United States right now, is it tends to, the paramount guiding principle that it tends to favor is whether or not consumers are receiving harm, and the biggest measure for that is price. And what's happened with big tech is, since their products are free for the consumer, it's really been sort of a blind spot with the way antitrust laws are written, that they've been able to skirt around that, because their argument is it's free for consumers, and so, there's no problem. And that's a little bit tricky, but I think these cases, whether it's the Google case that the DOJ brought a few months ago or this case against Facebook, are alleging that there are other grounds where they can prove harm to the consumer in terms of privacy, data privacy, and all of that, as well as the point you're mentioning, that it's squashing other competitors. So it's a little bit of a tall order, but we'll see. The other lens to look at is a political one. And the interesting thing is this theme of scrutinizing and potentially breaking up big tech is really one of the few themes that does have bipartisan support in the U.S. and globally. And so even today's ruling, it's 48 states, Democrat and Republican-run AGs, as well as the FTC actually voted 3-2 to bring this lawsuit, and it was a bipartisan vote, 2 Democrats and 1 Republican. So I think the odds are that regardless of the future of who's in power politically, this thing might have legs.
Yeah, I think everybody is worried about this, and rightly so. Thanks for joining us again, Kosha. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
Fascinating issue, this one. Big dollars, a lot of consumer issues involved here, a lot of politics as well, as Kosha Gada mentioned.